Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing well. Isn't it mental, right? This time yesterday, I filmed a video which I'm uploading today as well. I don't know if you'll have seen it already because I'm going to upload them in the order that I filmed. And it was lovely. We'd had a week of horrendous weather where it's like you have to have the lights on all day because it was so dark from all the rain and the thunder and lightning and all this lot. And yesterday it was lovely. Come to today and it's gone groggy again, but at least it's only like it's not raining and it's just because of cloud cover, but I have to turn the lights on in order to actually film this video. So it's just like that was a nice day, the whole one day that the nice weather lasted, but oh well. So it's been a couple of weeks since you've seen me, partly because I've been busy doing other things, but partly because of the book that I'm here to review. But before I get into the review, there is one thing that I want to talk about very quickly, and that is that I have decided, because I had like a stack of DVDs and Blu-rays that I hadn't gotten through that I bought earlier this year, and I was just like, you know what, bite the bullet and just get through it. So that's why it's taken me longer, partly the reason why it's taken me longer to get this review to you, because I have been spending my time after work, or some period of time after work each day or every other day, you know, catching up with these DVDs I haven't got around. And one of them I am obsessed with, and it is Cyrano, or Cyrano as they say in the film, but whenever I see that name I pronounce it Cyrano. I can't even say it now. Cyrano. So if I say Cyrano or Cyrano during this little session, it's, you know, I'm just muddling it up. But yes, I got the DVD of this for like £5 or £6 off Amazon because I missed it when it was at the cinema, and it wasn't a production that they were really showing where I live and such, because obviously they were trying to get record numbers of people back into the cinema and everything, so it was like they were focusing on big blockbusters rather than smaller films. So this one kind of got pushed to the back where I lived. So even if COVID didn't happen, I don't think it really would have been around anyway where I live, which is really upsetting. But this came out December last year, and it is a production of the play Cyrano de Bergerac. But this is very different because it is a musical version based on the stage play that got put on in the West End, and Joe Wright saw that West End show, thought it was amazing. Oh no, it wasn't West End, was it? Sorry, no. I'm getting muddled up. No, it was in America. I don't know if it was on Broadway or off Broadway, but it was in America. So there we go. Sorry, my fault, my error. And loved it. And Peter Dinklage was starring in it, as was Haley Bennett, there, who plays Roxanne. And yeah, and he wanted to make it into a film, and he has, and it is absolutely beautiful. I cannot get over the score. I cannot get over that. I saw this on Friday night. Yesterday, which was Saturday, I went to Tesco's down the road from me, and I bought myself an iTunes gift card, you know, first thing in the morning, ran home, downloaded the soundtrack, and I've been listening to it constantly. I love it so much. And it's actually really good to see, because I was very unimpressed by Joe Wright's previous film, which was The Woman in the Window on Netflix. Like, what the hell was that? I'm sorry, it kind of felt like he did that for the money. It didn't feel like one of his films whatsoever, and I didn't like that film at all. So getting him back doing stuff like this was just like, loved it. So yeah, if you're able to see it, grab yourself a copy, you know, or download, stream it wherever you're able to, and watch it. And Peter Dinklage, it's one of my absolute favourite performances of his that I have ever seen. I bawled my eyes out. I was ridiculous, and kind of thankful that I watched it at home, because if I had been in that state at the cinema, oh my god, people would be looking around going like, what the fuck is wrong with her? I was gone. I was just like, oh man. So yeah, if you're able to watch it, do. It's absolutely brilliant. I loved it. But anyway, I'm here to talk about the book I've been reading over the past 2 weeks, which is Doctor Zhivago by Boris Pasternak. So as I said, part of the reason why I couldn't get this review to you sooner was because of other things I've been doing, watching DVDs and such. And I've only got one box set left, which I've started yesterday, and then I'm done. So yay. And the other reason why it's taken so long is because of this book. So, in case you don't know what it's about, Doctor Zhivago is a book which follows Yuri Zhivago. It covers extensive period of time in Russian history, and it covers the war between, first of all, Russia and Japan, then the Russian Revolution, and then goes into the First World War and after the war. So there is a lot of stuff going on in this book. Boris Pasternak was a Russian man who wrote poetry. His other book that he's very well known for is a collection of poems, and it caused quite a stir. He had some very strong thoughts about the Russian Revolution and such, and he kind of experienced some things that happened in Doctor Zhivago. So, and he wrote this book in 1957 and sadly died of lung cancer in 1960. And his funeral, I read about his funeral yesterday. If you go on Wikipedia and find the page about him, and there is this massive section about his funeral and all the crazy shit that happened during it. And it's like, oh my God. So this man was really a political kind of stirrer, as it were. He wrote some controversial stuff for the time in his home country, and with this book caused a massive stir in Russia when it was published, because his views, he very much brought into the character of Yuri Zhivago about the war and everything to do with Russian politics and everything, and so much so that it was like banned. You couldn't get it anywhere. So this book had to be smuggled, I think, to Vienna, and then it might have been Venice. I can't remember. Venice or Vienna, obviously two very different places. But began with a V. I will look it up and confirm that in the description. And that was how it was able to be published and sent out across the world. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the same year, in 1957, but was forced to reject it because obviously the various Soviet Union and such was not happy with this whole situation. As I said, he died in 1960, and it was a case of, it wasn't until 1987 when his son finally accepted the award, because of it was coming to the end of the Soviet Union and such, and he accepted the award on behalf of his late father. I just realised I started talking about what the story is about and went into a whole bio about Boris Pasternak. So, okay, back to the story. So, Yuri, we follow his entire life basically, and he is orphaned at the beginning of the book with his mother's death, and his father hasn't been around for so many years. He has no idea who his father is, and he is brought up by his aunt and uncle with his cousin Tonya, and it follows his life through him going to medical school and the trials and tribulations of growing up. And he's a very passionate man who believes in helping the individual. He doesn't look at the wider scale of what is happening. So like the wider scales of war and genocide and that, and how some people far back, the higher powers see this as, well, we're doing this revolution, we've got to clean out everything, we've got to do what we need to do, whereas he sees it as an individual person level. He doesn't see the wider picture, as it were, and that's what caused, it was such a stir, this book at the time in the political history of his country. And he subsequently meets a woman called Lara, and it's his relationship with Lara. And so that is the brief, yet very long, because in my wormhole I fell down with the biography of Boris Pasternak, summary of the story. So, as I said, Boris was a well-known poet. So and you can tell that in the poems that Yuri writes, because Yuri loves writing as well, and he writes a series of poems throughout the book, and right at the end of the book is his collection of poems. Because you don't necessarily get to read those poems as they are played out as he's writing them in the course of the story, but you get to see the collection at the end, and you know what certain references mean because of you followed his story, etc., etc. So yeah, when you read those poems, you can very much tell that Boris is a poet. But Boris is not a prose writer, or at least to me. I found this book very, very difficult to read. And unfortunately, it doesn't help what Boris does with his characters. And I'm going to pull up a picture, which I downloaded from the Doctor Zhivago novel Wikipedia page. Okay, so you can, if you want to, go on the Wikipedia and find this image. I don't know if you're actually going to be able to see that. Can you see that? Oh, sort of. Okay, so this, it looks kind of like London Underground map. But this is actually a list of all of the different characters and all the interactions that they have and all the connections throughout the course of the novel. Now, the unfortunate thing is that Boris will have these characters interact extremely randomly, but also what he does, which doesn't help things, is that he has several names for every single character and the way that he refers to them. So Yuri can be referred to as his first name, Yuri. He can be referred to as his first and second name, Yuri Andreevich. He can be used as second, middle, and surname, Yuri Andreevich Zhivago. He can be referenced just as surname, Zhivago. He also gets referenced by the nicknames that all the individual characters give him. So he has several names. That is true for every single character in this book, and it feels like there are hundreds, if not thousands, because they all come through, and he feels like he has to tell you the history of every single character, to the point where it's just a bit like, can we get on with the story? Because I'm getting bored of reading these backstories. But then he does some like cardinal sin stuff to me, where he will, whenever something like emotionally led happens, a moment that is really strong emotionally, it's almost like he cuts ties. He goes, nope, not going there. Nope, not doing it. So, for example, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but only tiny, because I'm going to talk about a separation of two characters. I'm not going to give information why they're being separated or anything. And there are multiple times that they get separated. So this isn't like I'm giving the massive thing away, that this is a massive plot thing that happens. This happens on multiple occasions. So Lara and Zhivago, they get thrown together and kind of pulled apart multiple times. And one of them, they're working together. And there's clearly there's a bit of chemistry that's happening, so to speak. And Yuri's starting to, to really focus on Lara. And then suddenly, and, they have a bit of a chat. And you're like, oh, okay, feeling that something's going. And then the next time, Lara's gone in a week. I'm sorry, what? Just like, you're not going to talk about how that impacts Yuri. You're not going to talk about how Lara felt about being separated from Yuri. You're not going to tell us what happened. Did they say goodbye to each other? Did they hug? Are you good? No? Okay. And that happens all the time. And I'm like, but you're a poet. You you know about emotion, you know how to convey emotion in words, and you're like, but you're not giving me that. This is one of the most prominent love stories in classic literature history, and you're not giving me that information. It felt so bizarre, so bizarre. And yeah, just to have you suddenly feel like the ground just kind of fall away from you when you're like, you know how like in films and dramas and such, you feel the build up, and the author is, you know, very much building up, and then you know that there's going to be a scene that's going to happen between these two, and it might break your heart, it might fill you with joy, whatever. You know there's going to be a crescendo, there's something, you know, it's bang. And literally it's like Boris is building, and then he just goes, I'll come back to that, and he just doesn't go back to it. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I just, yeah, it was a struggle. Now, despite the struggles, let's put the struggles aside, I did really love his honesty when he was talking about the various tumultuous periods of time that happened in Russian history that he had experienced, and so he was able to give his own perspective on, and he didn't hold back, not in the slightest. He will give you full detail of the goriness of war, the horrific genocides that happened, just true horrors. He doesn't hold back, and I have to love his honesty about that. And even though there were bits that drove me up the friggin' wall, and I'm not just talking about bits that I've already covered, I'm talking like, this is a 500-page book, and I swear I spent 100 plus being on trains and talking about trains and the route of trains and how the scene coming off of trains, and it was just constantly about trains. I was like, yeah, but that does kind of make sense because Russia is so massive. It's something, isn't it? I could be completely wrong about this. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's something I think about 1/6 or 1/5 of the entire land coverage in the world. It's ridiculously big. So when you know, being caught up with people fleeing where the cities and such where they live and try to find new life elsewhere, it totally makes sense, and you get that struggle and everything that Yuri goes through. But I just find it very weird though that you constantly have these physical struggles that he will talk in depth about, but when it comes to emotional struggles like the separation stuff, like I just mentioned, it's like he goes, nope, not interested, or I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I don't know if he found it tough to do that, or is it that thing I have to keep on reminding myself that at the time, because of all of the turmoil that had happened in Russia and such, was this typical style of writers of the time? Was it a case of that they had been through so much that there was just nothing left for them to necessarily be able to convey with words, so he just couldn't go there? You know, I don't know. I find it very interesting though that Boris talks about War and Peace he makes reference to it quite a few times in this book. But the thing is that War and Peace, I was blown away by that book. That was one of the most astonishing reads. I 3 weeks and 1 day, I still remember every single day of reading that book and being in love with it. But I kind of feel like he keeps on referencing War and Peace throughout this book, and I kind of feel like is he thinking that he's writing War and Peace 2.0? That's kind of like, you know, the very bad person in me thinking that that's what he's trying to achieve. But I couldn't help it, because why is he always referencing Tolstoy? Why is he always referencing specifically War and Peace? I was just a bit like, are you trying to get into people's good books or something by that? I don't know. It's just, yeah, it kind of irked me. I kind of feel like if you go into reference something like War and Peace the way that he does in this book, it has to be for a purpose, and it just kind of felt like it wasn't really for a purpose. It was just a bit weird just to suddenly start talking about War and Peace. Yeah, odd. But I think with War and Peace, the thing is that Tolstoy knew how to do characterization. He knew how to do a plot flow. He knew how to keep readers reading, and unfortunately Boris, with his prose, for me, doesn't have that at all. And sometimes I was just a bit like, why are you doing that with that character? That doesn't make it's just, this is bizarre. And I felt a bit let down by the ending as well, that it just, and I sent actually a picture of the last bit of Lara's story to my sister, because it's a line that is in the film and in the 2002 drama version, both which I'm going to talk about very shortly, and that kills me. It is so frigging sad, but when you read it, it feels nihilistic. It feels very weird, and like, with the whole having to know the backstory of every single character that you come across, and at times when it's just the most inappropriate moment, like with how the story ends for Yuri. I'm not going to give anything away, of course. It's a massive, like, kind of moment, and then he goes, right, so here's the backstory of that person that was in that scene just before. And I'm like, what are you doing? No, please don't do this. Don't do this, Boris. This is not the time. Don't do this. And he's like, no, I'm going to do it. And it just broke. It broke this pretty decent chapter of this of Yuri. And it just, yeah, he just went, right, I'm going to go off on this tangent. And that irked me. If it was structured differently, if he had better characterization, if he had better plot flow, and scenes, actually depicted scenes that are so important to the relationships of characters and such, that would have worked. So if there was more of the emotional connection, that would have made this, I think, so much better. But unfortunately, it just didn't do that. So yeah, it was a struggle. I'm not going to lie. It is one of the hardest books I think I've read. I'm glad I've read it, because I did. It wasn't a case of I got to the 100-page point and went, right, do I really want to stick through this? I carried on. I only got to really feeling that way maybe about halfway through, because I love the story of Dr. Zhivago and I wanted to persevere. But I was like, well, I've gotten this far, I'm going to carry on. And I spent all day reading yesterday and this morning to finish this book. And I'm actually quite glad that it's done now. I'm glad. So when it comes to adaptations, the two versions that I have, which I highly recommend, are the 1965 film version. This is a slipcover. I don't really like the slipcover because look at the beauty underneath. Oh, the proper film cover, sorry. So this is the 45th anniversary edition that came out, Blu-ray that came out. This is from 1965 when the film was released. It is truly one of the most breathtakingly beautiful films that ever existed. My God. It's 3 hours 20 minutes. It needs all that 3 hours 20 minutes, just so that you're aware. That does include the overture, the introduction, and a break in the middle. So there is a bit of that 20 minutes is used with, filling up that time. So yeah, just so that you are aware. Omar Sharif as Zhivago absolutely kills me in this film. I love him. The way that he expresses Yuri's struggles on his face. It's like, good God, he understood Yuri. And what is wonderful about this film is that, those scene holes that I was talking about, where it feels like that Boris has just gone, nope, not going to go there. They fill those holes, and they are unreal. They are unreal. I love them so much. Yes, it's a long film, but it is absolutely beautiful. It tells the story very, very well. One thing I will say, though, is that it does limit you on, even though it does show struggles of the various, wars and everything that Yuri gets caught up in, it does limit itself. It doesn't go into too deeper darkness, if you see what I mean. And I think that's probably because Hollywood at the time very much, and they still exist now, that they will go dark, but they will only go so dark. And don't forget also the certificate is a PG, and obviously they wanted to make sure that as many people as possible would be able to go see it. So there is that as well. So it captures the story beautifully. I said Omar Sharif was just, oh my God, he's stunning in this film. I cannot get over him. Oh God, I'm trying to put it back in and it's just won't slide. There we go. As I said, this came out in 1965, which is 8 years after the book was published, so it's relatively close to the actual publication. And because it was such a massive film, obviously it took a very long time to film. And I haven't mentioned, how have I not mentioned her yet? Julie frigging Christie as Lara in this film. Amazing. And the two together, their chemistry is just, it's beautiful. I love Dr. Zhivago so much. As my nemesis friend Sarah, hi Sarah if you're watching, said, it is like the perfect film to put on when it's like, bad weather, snowy kind of, just curl up with a night on the sofa, blanket, hot drink, or some popcorn or whatever, and just watch this absolutely gorgeous film. It is truly beautiful. So highly recommend the 1965 film version, Doctor Zhivago. And the other one I recommend is the ITV 2002 drama starring Keira Knightley and Hans Christensen. So not Hans Christensen, what am I saying? Hans Matheson. Why did I say Christensen? I have no idea. Hans Matheson. So sorry, Hans, I got your name wrong. So I don't have the box anymore because I've had a recent clear out to space in my house, and I've put my various DVDs and such in slipcases. So that's why I'm holding it up in this. So this is a 2-disc set of the drama that came out. It's from 2002, as I said, made by ITV, and it's 4 hours long. So it's longer than the 1965 version, but it's still, pretty good. Now, this one gets the images and horror of the Russian Revolution and wars and such that Yuri kind of goes through, and everything so well. The emotional stuff is perfect. The development, I love it. The integrating real footage with the stuff that they've shot for the drama, fantastic. The acting, great. What am I going to say that I'm annoyed about? Because you can feel the build up. I can feel the build up too. What they did with the script at times, I'm just like, oh my god. Straight off, okay, I have to say this because it's a running thing that happens throughout the drama. At the very beginning, as I said in the book, Yuri's mother dies, and that leads him to then be brought up by his aunt and uncle. Instead, they make it that his father died, and I'm like, no. Okay, I'll let that one slide very, very slightly. But then someone appears at the funeral, and I'm like, fuck no, you're not supposed to be here. Get the fuck away. And then that character, there's a whole underlining thing with Yuri's father and his story and that, and it's like, that's not in the book. No, I'm not happy with that. So it's kind of like, this one is far more faithful to the book, but this one has the emotional depth that I really like. It's just, can these two merge? Now, Keira Knightley plays Lara, and Hans plays Yuri Zhivago, and I think they do have a good chemistry together, and it is well put together, but at times it did make me a bit uncomfortable, just because I'm like, I know that Keira Knightley was 17 when she filmed this, and yeah, I'm not necessarily comfortable seeing her totally naked, stuff like that. It's just kind of like, she's 17. I couldn't help but keep thinking that Keira Knightley is 17 in this. And also, one thing is that when Yuri goes through so much, and there's a point where he is like a shell of a human, and he's been through the weather, and his skin is all broken, his beard is just, it's ice, it's always like what he has been through so much, and they do that beautifully in this version. It just looks like he's just rubbed some mud on his face, and it's like, what, that's it, that's meant to convey the full struggle that he's been through. It's just kind of like, oh, there was some bits where I just feel a bit annoyed, and especially the ending, because they changed the ending, and it is, I get why they did what they did, and there are some beautiful things, like this whole thing that when Yuri and Lara first see each other, it's different from the book, and also this one, because this one is faithful to the book. He kind of sees her through a shop window, and his reflection, he moves his head so his reflection is on Lara's face, and it's just like, it's a beautiful moment, but didn't happen. It's just, so there are some absolutely beautiful things that this drama explores, but it just at times just didn't quite work. And as Sarah said to me yesterday, there has never been a perfect adaptation of Zhivago. Every single version has its own pros and its own cons, but the most faithful is the 1965 version. So I would definitely recommend the two of these. This one always makes me cry at the end because of the final line that relates to Lara. As I said, in the book, when you read it, it's a bit like, okay, but in the film, I absolutely cry my eyes out when I hear that line, because it's just so tragic. But that's the thing, because it got the emotional connection stuff throughout this one, it makes total sense that it got me upset for when I heard the line. So if I had to recommend two versions of Doctor Zhivago, it'd be the 1965 film first, and then the 2002 ITV drama. So yeah, those are the two. So, time for my questions, as always. So, would I read this again? No, I'm not bothered about reading it again. I mean, maybe in like another decade or more, I might go back to it, but right now, I've got no interest to read this again. Would I recommend it to anyone? If someone was interested in reading Russian literature, I definitely recommend, obviously, Tolstoy, that I have read, and I would mention this book and say, look, it's a obviously different author with different writing structure and such. If you want to give it a go, give it a go, but it does have issues with structuring and so many characters, all of them with several names and weird interactions with each other. Would I read any more of Boris's works? Well, I don't, other than the poems that he's also famous for, I don't know of any other books that he wrote, and this was published. This book, he started writing it in around, I think, 1910, 1911, and it got published in 1957. So he finished it, I think, 1955, 56. So it took a long time for him to write. As to if any of his other books, if there are any other books that I'm not aware of, I've said this before that it'd be unfair to not try another book of an author because of an experience of this one book, because I don't know what style the other book is written in. So if there were other books that I'm not aware of that Boris wrote, yeah, I'd give it a go and, see how that would do. But yeah, so although it is a great story, unfortunately the book just didn't quite hit it for me because of structural and characterization problems and such. But as I've always say, this is just my thoughts. That does what doesn't work for me could completely work for another person, and vice versa. So take what I've said with a pinch of salt. See if you want to give it a go, give it a go. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Doctor Zhivago. So if you read this book, I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Leave me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely to you at your side. I'll be back with my thoughts on my next read, which is Gone with the Wind. I am so excited to read this. I have loved this story since I was a little girl. But I've never gotten around to reading the book. The book is nearly 1,000 pages. So this is going to take at least 2 weeks, I think. Maybe 3. I don't know. We'll see how this is a thing that because Zhivago took me 2 weeks because the style was just so sluggish and quite hard to get through. I don't know what Margaret Mitchell's writing style was because I've never read it. So you don't know. I might fly through it. We'll see. But I'll be back with my thoughts on Gone with the Wind as soon as I'm done. All right, guys. Bye.